Daddy eats lost. Daddy eats lost. Daddy eats lost. Munch, munch, munch.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Daddy Eats Last, where we discuss the challenges of being a man in modern society and whatever the hell that even means. I'm Kane, and joining me this evening to chat man stuff are Ryan and Maddie. Firstly, gents, how was the weekend?
It was good, boys. Evening, Ryan. Spent yesterday feeling a little bit under the weather as I had my biannual outing on Friday night for the end of the financial year. So I'm glad that only happens, at 30 June and Christmas, because I just can't, handle the drink like I used to. So it was a bit of a late finish for me, 2 a.m. And then Kim thankfully took the kids out Saturday morning, kept them out of the house so I could recover. And then, today I did a bit of renovation, or not renovations, but sanded back a door and did a bit of painting. So we're using that in the house renovations. So.
Now, probably the two things I want to ask about your end of financial year party are, did you steal a market umbrella?
No, those days are well and truly behind me.
And was there any way to get a decab on the way home? And can you describe to the listeners what a decab is? The McTie slang.
The decab stands for double cheeseburger add bacon, and that was a term we used to throw around when I used to work at Hungry Jack's. When a car would order one, we'd just, rather than say the whole phrase, it'd just be a decab, and yes, that's what it stands for. So I used to get them quite a lot on a Friday night when I used to roll around with Kane back in the day.
You're on any decabs this weekend?
No decabs, but doesn't sound like anything better after a night of drinking than to have a decab. No, what happened this weekend? So we caught up with some friends of ours on Saturday night, still celebrating with various people, which I think we will be for quite a while, with regards to the engagement, which was lovely. And then finished off some timber bedside tables myself this weekend. So that was nice. They're in. They're all done. So happy days, and we got our asses handed to us in hockey this morning, but that was all right.
I feel bad.
So can't complain.
I didn't build anything this weekend like both of you, so I'm feeling infinitely less manly. I don't know what we really did this weekend. This is one of those weekends where things got away from us a little bit, and all of a sudden it's Sunday night, and it's just back into another week. So that's where we're at.
You do feel that little bit manly when you're building something, or if not that, you just don't think about other things. That's why I like doing it, because I realized we've got a lot going on with work since I've gotten back, and I'm bringing it home, which is not a good thing to do. But for about those 3 hours Saturday afternoon and a little bit today, I was just like, haven't thought about anything. This is fantastic. So building's therapeutic.
It's funny, I did mention that with the little fella when I was driving him around yesterday morning. He was discussing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. He said about building stuff. I said, Daddy's not very good at building things, but when he gets a chance to build things, he quite enjoys it, even though he's not very good at it. So, yeah, it's a really therapeutic thing sometimes. And that was our very first podcast we ever did. So if anyone listening wants to go revisit if building something actually makes you more manly, podcast episode number 1 for Daddy Eats Last touches on that. What I wanted to chat about tonight, guys, on the back of lots of different sort of lotto jackpots happening in the last couple of weeks. There's an Oz Lotto jackpot. There was a Powerball jackpot, like sort of 80, 90, 100 million sort of dollar jackpots. Really wanted to have a chat about what you would do and how you would change your life if you won a significant amount of money. And I say a significant amount of money is sort of, let's say $10 million. I think $1 million wouldn't necessarily change your life per se. It would make life easier, but you wouldn't be able to make sort of wholesale changes to your life where we live in Australia. But I think $10 million, if you won that in lotto, would make a serious difference to your life. So, yeah, if you guys have got any thoughts around what you would do if you bought, even if you bought a TattsLotto ticket, if you won TattsLotto. But firstly, does anyone buy TattsLotto tickets anymore who are under sort of 60?
I definitely don't buy TattsLotto tickets. Maybe every now and then when there's a massive jackpot up for grabs, we might, as a novelty, go and buy one. But yeah, definitely not on a regular basis.
Right?
No, I definitely don't. But clearly a lot of people have to be buying them for those kind of jackpots. So,
was looking at the data online, and it's millennials aren't buying anywhere near as many tickets as sort of baby boomers and other generations have previously. So rather than TattsLotto, let's say you both like renovating and building stuff. You're digging a hole in the backyard and you found $10 million in a hole, and you took it to the police, and after 30 days, the police couldn't find anyone. So then I think under Australian rules, it's for your $10 million. What would you guys do with it?
Firstly, I love that you assume that we'd take it to the police, that we are good civilians of society, clearly. I would have to be in conundrum if I found $10 million, whether I would be taking that anywhere.
I'd keep a market umbrella I found on the side of the street, per Matthew McTighe, but I'd probably take $10 million to the cop shop if I found it.
I'd probably take half and then just, assume the other half went missing at least. But yeah, and I mean, yeah, I don't know too many of my friends that buy TattsLotto tickets. I think everyone's probably a bit too hooked on the old sports bets and all those kind of things. So when I make 10 million, but let's just say it's handed like this. Look, my answer is going to be really boring. It's really not going to be exciting or great. I would basically allocate 2 to getting the place that we'd want in Yarraville here in Victoria. Nice, just simple, fun suburb there. Buying my mum a house and getting a place down in Hobart. And, for people that aren't in Australia that think $2 million is a lot for 3 houses, for people that live in Australia understand that it's really actually not. And then, yeah, like I said, I'd be really boring. I'd be $1 million in the bank, $2 million in some pretty blue chippy kind of stocks, $2 million start up obviously we had a bit of pre-warning about this question, so I have thought about my allocations of the funds. $2 million to just do some startup investing, venture capital, and I would fly first class and probably go live, TK and I would go live overseas for a while and just enjoy ourselves there, probably somewhere, London or New York, and be a doorstep away from traveling into Europe and America. But yeah, basically I'd do all the responsible things, bank it, and what I certainly would do is not tell my extended family.
So yeah, that's almost better advice than giving the money to the police in the first instance and then getting it back, because as soon as you sort of tell extended family you run into any sort of money, or you kind of you have some money, even friends, I think the hands generally go out, don't they?
Yes, they do. So no, I would keep that very quiet. I'd tell my mum, because she feel awfully guilty that I bought her a house. I'd be like, Mum, it's okay. You only got 5% of this 10 million. But besides that, keep it very quiet, I think, and just do some very boring and freeing and probably just accelerating things that we want to do in the next decade anyway.
Yeah. Would you buy your mum a house where she is now or closer to you?
No, I'd buy a house where she is now. She would not like it if I didn't, but I would ensure that she had space to come, especially when we have, little rugrats and that kind of thing. And I would ensure that she always had a fund that was an aeroplane babysitting fund. If I found $10 million that was utilized every school holidays.
That's a very practical and smart way of doing things. What about you, Matthew?
Look, I've thought about this a few times in my life. I mean, and even discussing with Kim, like, even though we don't buy TattsLotto tickets, there's always what would you do if you won TattsLotto? So first and foremost, we'd pay off the mortgage, and then we would probably I'd probably take care of some family, like make sure my brother and my sister, I'd probably pay their mortgages off as well. I'd probably buy nothing too lavish, but like a holiday house or a launching pad, like Ryan said, over maybe Europe somewhere, just to base yourself. So I'd be traveling a lot more, maybe a few months more of the year. And traveling, I'd like to travel in a bit more style. So not like a private jet or anything. I just, either business or first class when I travel. I would probably I'd still like to work because I wouldn't want to get bored. And I'd probably get back down to part-time, but I'd like to do something maybe like flipping houses or something like that. Change careers completely and just, yeah. So I'll do a bit of renovations here and there. And then probably give a bit of a chunk to charity as well, probably a cancer charity or something like that. And that would probably round out the 10 mil, I'd say.
Okay, I just want to pick up one thing you've mentioned there and take that back to Ryan. Work. What would you do work-wise, Ryan?
I'd just go back to work. Just rock up to work the next day.
The same work, same work that you're doing now?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, just like I enjoy running businesses and I get to do that and I get to build them. I'd probably, like I said, I'd allocate a bit like what Matt said with his flipping the houses. I'd use a portion of it to be more invested and sitting on boards and building startups and that kind of thing. But no, I'd pretty much just, wouldn't, thinking about this, the thought of stopping work did not go through my head at all.
Which is really important. I think the moment people stop work and stop structure is where things start to unravel mentally as well. Mm-hmm. So that's the same for people who retire. If they retire early or retire without sort of a plan on what they're going to actually do in retirement, all the money in the world is not going to probably save you from maybe running into some mental problems because you have no structure anymore.
No, and there's a lot of actually research about that. If you retire early or like when you retire, transition and plan, because it's second to, I think, 15 to 19-year-olds in terms of which, and obviously there's a lot of stuff going on when you're 15 to 19 to understand the mental health craziness. But when you retire, that's like the second most prevalent time of coming into those problems.
Yeah. Well, I really like that you enjoy what you do enough now that you wouldn't actually change that in a wholesale way. So that's great. Going back to you, Maddie, school, what you're doing with the girls and Sammy with school, would that change? Like you mentioned traveling a few months and those sort of things, would, I guess, the plan for your overall family sort of change?
Yeah, so it'd be probably traveling school holidays. Like I wouldn't change their lives too much that they would sort of know that, Dad's won $10 million. But on the working part-time, the other part of the week, I'd like to spend more time with the kids. So, the pick-up from school, the drop-offs, more time in school holidays with the kids as well. So, but yeah, they'd still go to the same schools. And yeah, so I don't think much would change on that front of life there.
Flipping houses, is that something you've always had in the back of your mind as something you'd want to do one day, or just you've got the taste for it now, you've built a cubby?
Well, definitely hasn't been something I've been wanting to do my whole life or anything like that. But when we've the place we bought down in Melbourne that we lived in first, and then we sort of had that rented out while we're up here, and then going back down to do that up to sell, and then buying another property up here in Brisbane to do up and rent out. It just sort of it's a real enjoyable process. I haven't done anything too extreme other than, some painting and things like minor sort of refurbishments here and there. But, we love sitting down watching these, flipping houses TV shows. And, at the moment, Kim's really invested in the renovation we're doing as well. And, the changes of the footprints and things like that. So, yeah, it's, I can't do too much, but I'd love to get in there and have a crack. And I think, having the not so much pressure of, having to work full time and winning $10 million would probably really open up to some of those kind of opportunities.
Yeah, and you'd still be able to have your biannual sort of celebrations and get home at 2 a.m. You could actually up that to quarterly.
I could, yeah. So I'd hire a nanny or something and let them look after the kids instead of kids.
I was going to say, would you consider something like that? Like, not a nanny per se, but would you consider a different form of sort of home care is the right word, like things around the house?
Yeah, definitely. We're looking at some options now for later in the year, but I think that'd help a lot. Having like an au pair or something like that, just living, to lighten the load for both Kim and I in terms of getting the kids ready and everything like that. So,
well, I'm happy to consult you when you win your $10 million because I think I've helped you identify a few key areas which you can kind of hone in on to make your life easier.
Thank you, Kane. I'm assuming you won't charge too much either.
No, I just take a percentage of the 10.
What about you, mate? Have you given this much thought?
Oh, you know I'm the most boring person going around when it comes to these sort of things. I'm far too sensible.
This is your opportunity to be, lavish and.
Yeah, I should ham it up and say I just jump on a jet and just fly around the world and just, never look back. But that's completely not me and also completely unrealistic. So much like both.
Would you buy a boat?
I've always said I'd like a boat office, so therefore it's tax deductible. But I'm not sure I'm not sure if that will float with the ATO. So yeah, I don't think I'd get a boat. Boat's not for me. I wouldn't mind a little tinny or something just to fish off every now and again, but not an elaborate sort of boat. That and I need to learn to swim a bit better. But I am absolutely boring. So I would put $1 million in my parents' super, so my dad could retire almost immediately, because he's a carpenter who's 65 plus and is still getting up and down ladders most days and doing hard work, which he shouldn't really be doing at his age. That would give him the ability to ease out of work, not fully, retire without a plan, but it'll give him the capacity to pick and choose the jobs that he did rather than basically taking on any job. So I'd do that. That would leave me with $9 million. I'm assuming that my $10 million is not being taxed, so I get to keep it all. So the $9 million, I'd literally just invest. I think I could get 5% on that, which would leave me with sort of $450,000 a year, $9 million at 5%. I'd lose a bit of that to tax. And then really, I just use that to live on, and then do all those day-to-day things. I just have more choice. The thing I'd really sort of hone in on would be things around chores. While I don't mind doing the washing, I don't mind doing most of the cooking. I don't mind all that sort of stuff. Help there and not having to do that, I wouldn't miss it either. I'd really look to kind of phase out things like that.
I've just got to stop you there. So you're giving $1 million to your family, which is fantastic, or your dad, and then you're putting the $9 million in the bank, and you're living off $450,000 a year. What are you spending this on? You've got to go somewhere. You've got to give us one thing you're going to spend it on. Because living off $450 a year, and you're doing exactly what you're doing now, there's so much money that's just building up there.
He's got a weekend trip to Vegas, and there it all goes once a year. 30th of June tax party.
I don't know. It would just give me the ability at the end of each year to just donate any excess to charity. Obviously, I don't have expensive hobbies. I don't have any hobbies. I'd maybe pick up a hobby, hopefully not an expensive hobby or expensive habit, in inverted commas. But I don't think I'd do anything that different. I just ease back on the particular work that I do that I don't like. I'd probably get rid of the business that I'm running and maybe do something else which I like a little bit more. But yeah, I don't think I would change too much. I can fill time pretty well. I could get to lunchtime most days by, getting up and actually having some time to go to the gym. If it's nice to go for a walk, have breakfast, you work out what's going to be cooked for dinner, and then have sort of 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon to, I even say, give time to a charity, like do some sort of charity work there. So the money's not the important part. It's then just really just helping. And then any excess money at the end of the year, I'd probably just get rid of.
There's nowhere you want to go in the world.
Well, there's nowhere where I don't think I couldn't manage inside the $450,000 a year.
I think that would be pretty comfortable. 450K a year.
Yeah, but again, it'd be no different. Like if I chose to go anywhere, you could go on a whim, and you could basically get a ticket at last minute to go to X place and stay where you wanted, and not really worry about the cost and worry about the saving. I guess that's the part now, is where you have to plan and save. And the last time I went overseas, I was still staying in hostels and things like that. I wouldn't have to do that anymore.
That is true.
I could if I wanted to, but it would be unusual. So yeah, I'm absolutely boring, but I guess that's the nature of sort of my sort of financial responsibility that I don't know how I grew up with it, because my parents I wouldn't consider overly financial literate, but I guess that's why I got into what I do, is because of that exact reason.
So what would you do work-wise then? What would you want to explore? I'd go be a venture capitalist and sit on a bunch of boards. Maddie would flip some houses. Do you have any inkling and itch of what you'd look at doing?
I think it'd be much more towards yours than flipping houses. I think I would break houses. So yeah, I certainly wouldn't be something you're doing. I wouldn't be building. Yeah.
This is
I
great. You can come in and demolition them, and I'll build them up.
We've got a couple of verticals there, I think, Matthew. That's a business in itself.
Would you buy a radio station?
No, see, this is the thing. Like, I could almost buy a soccer club or something like that, and just potter around with things like that. I used to love soccer, and I think we'll talk about this in a couple of weeks' time, over a couple of episodes. Bucket lists, which is another thing we'll discuss, and what's on your bucket list, and whether this forms part of your bucket list, or you need a more manageable bucket list, or your bucket list changes as you age, or your bucket list changes as you may come into more income. So I don't think I'd maybe be more likely to volunteer at a radio station and just help, as opposed to sort of try to purchase one. That and all, I think radio's kind of maybe going to die away a little bit over the next few years, especially with podcasts seemingly popping up more and more.
Yeah, I think it's just highlighting not necessarily the money. I mean, probably mentally healthy that none of us are chasing the money for the go and buy expensive toys and that kind of thing, but just that freedom that it gives. Like, I would just become much more global in the business activities that I do, and thoroughly enjoy flying around, sleeping in the air in first or business class, and just having the freedom to do that. So I think it just fast tracks a few things, but yeah, I certainly would have no desire necessarily. I'd hire a Ferrari and go to town on a racetrack, but I'd certainly have no desire to actually buy a Ferrari. I'd probably be more worried about parking it in like Woolworths car park or something, and somebody scratching it, than actually wanting to own a Ferrari or anything like that.
Yeah, would your answers have changed even 5-10 years ago? Would they have been much different? I don't think mine would have been that much different. I still would have been fairly sensible about things, and still kind of worked out I could do basically everything I wanted to do in life on the investment earnings on it. But would that differ for you guys? Would your answers have been much different a little while ago?
I don't think they would have been, to be honest. I'm with you. Like, back 10 years ago, we were. What year is it?
Were you engaged then, Matthew? We discussed this the other week. By the way, just on that, were you right about your engagement story? Were you corrected by your much better half after that episode?
No, I think I got it pretty spot on. Yeah, I did ask her afterwards.
Brownie points there.
It goes to show I do remember some things. Yeah, look, we were just in the market to buy our first house, so I guess the answer probably would have been the same, to pay off a mortgage. Obviously, we didn't have any kids then, but in my answers I gave, didn't really involve kids too much. We were still starting our lives traveling, so yeah, I think much of what I said tonight would have probably been the same 10 years ago.
Ryan, you would have been about 15 10 years ago, wouldn't you?
Shit. No, I wouldn't have been, but I wouldn't have been far off. I would have been 18 10 years ago. Yeah, no, my answers would have been very different. I would have bought a Ferrari then. I would have gotten the 10 mil, rolled in, picked up a Ferrari, probably bought a plane and a couple of Rolexes along the way, just to let it be known. But I think now, yeah, I guess back then I've always been interested and fascinated by business, and generally highly driven and ambitious. But that has changed over the last 10 years to not necessarily, which I think has changed very positively, to not be driven by the money side of it, but be driven by the impact side of it, and the enjoyment of doing it and playing that game and being in that space. So yeah, I think in the last 10 years now, I don't need to be showy with it, but definitely 18-year-old Ryan would have been like, and I'd also just turned 18, so I probably would have taken all my friends to Vegas, and no, well, you wouldn't be able to because 21 over there. I probably would have taken all my friends to Melbourne and hired out some penthouse rooms at Crown or some dumb shit. So I have matured in the last 10 years, I would say.
Would have just shouted a couple of rounds of decabs.
I would have been shouting a lot of rounds of Jaeger bombs back then, actually.
The poison
All
of
right,
choice. The poison of joy.
let's make a pact. If any of us win 10 million, we'll do a live podcast from Vegas.
Yeah. With a round
Like it.
of Jaeger bombs and a round of decabs.
Yeah, just to round out the night.
And we'll be flying at least business class there.
At least.
Brilliant. Well, you got to start digging your holes in the backyard and see if you can find that $10 million.
All right.
Oh, in the next couple of weeks, we'll do bucket lists. So do you ever think, gentlemen, about what your bucket lists are now? I'm sure you probably already have bucket lists. I might have to try to make one between now and when my episode is. We'll do that in the next few weeks. So that'll be interesting. It can be linked to this, whether it's a sort of, I don't know, an aspirational bucket list or something which is a bit more practical and achievable. But for now, that wraps it up for Daddy Eats Last. Remember to subscribe to Daddy Eats Last on iTunes if you haven't already. And while you're there, please leave a review. Tell your mates about the podcast, especially if they are guys. Most of all, thanks for listening. We'll be back next week for another episode, or should I say, serving of Daddy Eats Last. How's that for a dad joke? Catch you next week.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.